like you're playing a scale. And you can really feel tension in there, and it's kind of awkward and spidery. And then she gets them to raise the wrist, not the elbow, the wrist, and do the same thing. And suddenly it's like your fingers are free. They can move as fast as you want. So then we have the thumb drops. So some people play with perfect wrist posture until their thumb hits a note, and then it's like the thumb presses, the whole wrist falls down. And you know, once you go back to the other fingers, the wrist raises back up again. Some people have problems using their thumbs in piano. And some of us don't. I find it kind of interesting. I don't know why that is. I think it maybe just comes down to basic strength. But I want you to patrol your piano playing, because a lot of people did this. Just to make sure you're not experiencing the drop. And playing that way is also going to slow you down. Like the more time your wrist spends kind of dancing around, the less you're going to be able to play quickly. And also, I don't know if you've probably heard this from these little examples, but it creates like an undesirable thunk. Like it kind of ends up creating an accent in a place where you don't always want an accent. So try to keep your thumb level as best you can. And for you, this might be really easy, but it also might be really hard. It kind of just depends on your physiology. The next category is a quick but important point, and it's on staccatos. So the adjudicator was really picky about articulations and staccatos in particular. We're not going to go into crazy depth here, but I just want to share some insight she had on how to make your staccatos come through more clearly, more quickly, so they don't sound so heavy, so they sound light like they're meant to sound. So she made a really good analogy with two different types of staccatos, and you tell me which one sounds more desirable. So you can have sticky peanut butter finger staccatos or crisp popcorn staccatos.
Выходит, Валь, сегодня никак?
Да нет, ты чё, тут столько снега выпало, вообще все рейсы отменили, и на самом деле еще работы навалило.
Папочка, не скучает это.
Стараюсь. Давайте, пока. Салют, врубай Сберзвук.
I mean, peanut butter's delicious, but like, as a finger analogy for how you play, probably not the ideal one. We want our staccatos bright and crisp. If they're kind of slow and lengthy like that, and sticky peanut butter fingers, it makes your playing almost sound lazy. And a lot of the times the solution to this is to simply play on the tips of your fingers. So, and this has to do with wrist position too. So if your wrist is a little raised or like level, it's easier to play on your fingertips. Because if your fingers are a little flat and you're playing on the finger pads, it's really tough. I'm really struggling to create that like staccato sound, whereas when it's rounded, it's much, much easier to play nice staccatos that don't sound really thick. Since we were in the church, since we were in a church, the adjudicator had the kids put their fingers on the back of a bench, and then she had them try that out on the bench and just kind of listen to the clicking sound. So she had them play staccatos with flat fingers and listen to the clicking sound, and then she had them do it rounded and listen to the clicking sound. And it sounds a lot more like pop, pop, pop when you play with rounded fingertips instead of finger pads. So whether you're a kid or an adult, it's a useful tidbit there. The third point is interpretation. So of all the points we're talking about today, posture and wrist stuff is obviously a really big deal, but this was possibly the most frequently mentioned of the topics. That of interpretation. So this includes things like creating a mood in the piece, creating a sound picture, we'll talk more about that, and telling a story with your piece, and also being able to play expressive and clear melodies. So let's talk about melodic shaping. We have a tendency to just kind of ignore slurs when we see them on the page. Like we kind of get it in a general sense that it means to play smooth, but there is more to a slur than that a lot of the time, especially when we're talking about the melody. So the adjudicator was always quick to point out that one of the most natural ways to play a phrase, let's look at this one just because it all fits on one line. So the most natural way to play a phrase is to rise, and you can kind of see the notes rise too, and then fall, and also you can kind of see the notes fall too. So how do you do that on the piano? Well, we can do that by creating a subtle crescendo and diminuendo. It's kind of like we're swelling up to the midpoint with just a gentle crescendo, and then we let the sound fall back down with a similarly gentle diminuendo. And what this does is it gives music a natural, lifelike, almost a breathing quality. Over and over, I saw her point out to the kids how important it is to have phrases that rise and fall, like a crescendo and diminuendo. Not like, not to like that dramatic degree, but subtly, like enough to make it kind of sound lifelike and breathing. Sorry, let me do that again. Everything I'm doing today is a C5 finger scale. It's just like a really good standard. Easy to demonstrate. Easy to play too if you're trying this at home. And it just kind of has like it's almost like a wave-like sound to it. I did a G5 finger scale. I'm switching it up. I love how frequently the adjudicator talked about painting a sound picture during festival week. Like a lot of the times we learn pieces with these interesting, expressive titles like The Stormy Sea or Mist or like some of the ones I got on the screen here and so on. So what she did is she asked the students how to paint that sound picture in the audience's mind. So how do we do that? How do we create a sound picture? What are the paints on our palettes, to go with the metaphor? So our tools or paints would be things like staccatos, tempo, phrasing, etc., etc. And these are how we impact the overall mood and tone of a piece. So it's really important to consider all of these details when you're playing beyond simply learning to play the notes. So learning the notes of a piece is like a good first step, but there's so much more to music beyond that. And finally, the fourth point is entertaining. So she asked the question to a group of kids, what is the point of performing? A piano piece, anything, performing anything. And none of the kids really, they're just kind of hemming and hawing a little bit. And so she told them the point of performing is to entertain the audience. We as performers are entertainers. Now entertaining, I don't just mean like the ability to get people to stand up and start dancing or anything like that. Entertaining can be like, someone can be entertained by a heart-breaking rendition of a very sad piece, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be like a happy thing. Entertainment is really just more about creating an emotional connection between you and the audience. You draw them in and they can get enjoyment out of it. So anyway, as a performer, it's your job to entertain. So how do you do that? So the first thing is to take risks. All too often what happens to us as performers is we spend all this time working on the details, but then as soon as we go and show it to someone or perform for someone or a group of people, all the details just kind of disappear. We get on stage, we get nervous, and we just like kind of clam up. I see this every year with my students. They can play beautifully in the classroom, they can play beautifully at home, very expressive, lots of dynamics, and then they get up on stage and there's like not a drop of dynamic contrast. It's all very flat. Or if the student has a really lively, upbeat piece, they're playing loudly in the studio, they've got all the zest and energy they need, but then they get on stage and play kind of nervously, they hold back, they don't go above like a medium volume. So as the adjudicator said, live a little, live on the edge. It is a huge risk, it's a huge emotional risk. It's not even a risk, it's a perceived risk to get up and play an emotional piece for someone and open up your heart in that way. It is taking a risk, it is a little bit of a stretch outside of our comfort zone, but it's an important one if we want to be able to play effectively. So another thing with posture that she talked about is when you're finished a piece, is it a good idea to just kind of like, and then your hands kind of like flop in your lap and you walk away? I mean, no, that like obviously I was kind of setting that up to be a bad idea. So when you're playing, say you're playing something like really beautiful, like lots of flowing sounds and phrases, how are you going to be moving your hands? You want to move your hands in a rounded way. So let's go back to the first example. I know I'm getting like sidetracked here. So if a performer finishes like, they finish with like a loud fortissimo, and their hands kind of, instead of just, you do see the difference. It just adds to the entertainment value. It adds to that to that confidence. And if you're doing like an expressive, beautiful piece and you're kind of finishing it like. It's kind of like a nice little elegant wrist instead of again. See, do you see the difference? How you move your, she kind of called it the beautiful dancing wrists. So how you move your hands when you play can kind of impact the entertainment value that the audience can perceive. We have so little else to do as piano players. We can't like dance while we play or anything because there's so much focus. So I mean, little gestures and pretty movements and stuff make a huge difference in the audience's eyes. And I think it impacts the way we play too. So as piano players, we basically like sit down and then we face forward the whole time we play. Like it's not like with singers where you can kind of like get up and dance and make eye contact with people. That's why I'm not on stage singing because that's how I'd be dancing. Oh boy. Anyway, so I want to talk to you about commanding the stage with posture. And I was super proud about my students this year because the adjudicator commented to most of my students that they did a great job sitting down on the bench, which seems like nothing, but they took the time to fix the bench, to make sure the bench was kind of in the right spot for them. We talked about this, we rehearsed this. They sat on the edge of the bench, so which gives them like nice flat feet on the floor. They took a moment to get their foot on the pedal if that's what they needed to do. Kind of waited, did like maybe a breath or two, and then they played. So something so small like this makes such a big difference because it kind of shows the audience that you're confident and that like, you know, you're not just like running up to the stage and like sitting down the bench and like racing through your piece and then running away like, oh my goodness, get me out of here. You're kind of showing like that you're comfortable with this situation. You're okay moving a bench around in front of people because you're confident. You're not concerned. You're not freaked out. Even if your heart's beating a little faster, it gives the illusion of that confidence. It also allows you to play better because when you get set up in the right spot and make sure you're kind of grounded before you start playing, you're going to have a more centered performance. And that is all for today's episode on just adjudicating music festival, the things that I learned that I thought might, you know, help you out. And I know most of you are not kids. There's probably a few kids out there. But even as an adult, these are still things that we can kind of think about when we're playing. So hopefully you got something out of that. Thank you for
睇咗好大量嘅 comment， 同埋因為我老師咧係英國皇家音樂考官嚟嘅，咁我同佢溝通之間咧，我發現到其實佢哋都注重一樣嘢嘅，呢個係絕對會卡你分數嘅一樣嘢嚟嘅。大家好，歡迎嚟到名門音樂，我係全老師啊！今日想同大家分享嘅咧，當然就係 AVRSM 點樣去攞到一個好嘅成績啦。咁 distinction， 哇，好多同學仔都講我好難喎，即係都見到好少人先攞到 distinction 喎，點攞啊咁樣？你哋錄嘅4首歌裏邊一定要係近乎冇錯音啦，咁然之後咧係流暢度係完全好順㗎啦，咁跟住然之後咧，我自己個人心得有啲 tips 可以分享俾大家嘅，就係呼吸，因為咧你應該咧喺無論每一個級數裏邊咧，包括今年2021年到2022年嘅1、2級考試歌咧，你見到裏邊有啲細細嘅逗號咧，其實咧係叫你呼吸嘅。咁呢啲嘢如果冇做咧，其實都慳你分數。咁第二樣嘢啦，包括 articulation 講緊啲乜嘢咧？有好多考試歌咧，其實係裏邊譬如話跳啦，同埋練咧。如果你做唔足，又或者你可能你覺得做咗，咁當然因為級數越高，你手譜越長嘅時候咧，裏邊 lost 咗嘅 articulation 可能有時有1、2粒音冇跳到咧，其實都撐咗。所以喺拍片裏邊嘅過程係非常之艱難嘅，尤其是8級佢哋拍成差唔多成18分鐘一個 take 咧，係佢哋用咗好長嘅時間同埋好多嘅努力咧，先攞到呢個 distinction 嘅。另外咧，當然係每一位家長都會知道要咁嘅，級到8級嘅號咧，其實簡單都好咧，一定會揾到啲位咧係一個 F 啦、個 P 或者一啲段落大聲啊、一啲段落細聲嘅。咁當然呢啲係需要做足㗎啦。咁 distinction 講到明 distinction 啦，咁當然要求啊更加高啦。 就係無論可能考生自己可能喺現場覺得有做嘅時候咧，其實需要咧錄完嘅時候自己聽翻，究竟原來聽翻嗰條片嘅時候，發覺唔係真係咁明顯嘅啫喎，原來漸大啊漸細，原來都係少少嘅啫喎，咁所以咧喺拍片嘅時候咧，其實需要注意一下咧，可能就係夾住咗個電話或者即係夾住咗個 mon 咧，其實現場聽到嘅對比咧，真係嗰個感染力係細咗啲嘅，咁所以我建議學生咧要拍呢啲考試片嘅時候咧，應該要將佢哋嘅大細聲咧，其實要更明顯一啲去傳遞到俾人嘅。咁另外啊，我相信有睇咗好大量嘅 comment， 同埋因為我老師咧係英國皇家音樂考官嚟嘅，咁我同佢溝通之間咧，我發現到其實佢哋都注重一樣嘢嘅，就係歌與歌之間啦。咁4首歌咧，有啲同學仔咧會好衝動，尤其是可能因為拍片嘅時候可能好緊張啦。咁4首歌咧一落去講完嘢之後咧就即刻彈，然之後歌接歌都係即刻彈，係冇休息嘅時間嘅。咁呢樣嘢 eVGENIY 其實係雖然冇喺文字上講咗出嚟，但係佢哋每一位考官都好 care 呢樣嘢，就係你歌同歌之間咧係應該要休息一陣，等你自己個 mood 調教到你覺得你 ready 下一首歌啦，你先去彈出嚟。呢個係絕對會慳你分數嘅一樣嘢嚟嘅。咁然後咧就係關於每一首嘅 technical problem 啦，而我每一首 technical problem 講緊啲乜嘢咧，就係關於你首考試歌裏邊啦。當然啦，話到明考試梗係有嘢想考你㗎啦，無論1至8級都好啦，每一首擺得落去 eVGENIY 嘅考試歌，當然一定有佢自己嘅目的嘅。咁無論係譬如話，可能嗰首歌係特登考你3連音嘅，考你成首歌3連音準唔準嘅，又或者可能如果你留意到啲初級1、3級嘅歌咧，會有啲成首都跳嘅，咁咧佢哋應該每一首歌咧，其實都有一個想考到你嘅一個主旨嘅，你要揾到佢出嚟，然之後針對住佢想考你嗰樣嘢去做咧，咁你就會好容易達到好高分啦。哇！咁講咗咁耐，事不宜遲，我哋去示範一下咩 eVGENIY 嘅 distinction 咧係點樣做出嚟嘅。咁我哋今日咧請嚟咗 Mango 同學為我哋示範最新2021年嘅5級鋼琴嘅 distinction 版本啦。咁當然佢係用咗好大量嘅時間喺屋企好努力咁樣練習啦，而佢成個過程咧，只不過用唔多過3個月，由佢去揀歌去到拍片，去經歷過呢個5級嘅過程嘅。事不宜遲啊！咁啊，影片開始之前記住俾個 like 啊！咁我哋去片啦。 相信咧，大家睇完 Mango 條片之後咧，都有個概念，大概點樣彈係可以攞到 distinction 嘅。咁日後咧，我會拍更加多關於鋼琴資訊嘅片啦。如果大家中意我嘅片咧，麻煩大家睇一下我嘅影片啦，亦都訂住 subscribe 我嘅 YouTube channel、Facebook 同埋 IG 嘅。我係全老師，下次見啦，拜拜。
받을 수 있어요. 아무도 돈이면.
Готовим стейк чак-ролл. Какая мраморность. Смазываем стейк маслом и отправляем мясо на раскаленный гриль. Спаржа припущена и тоже отправляется на гриль. Подаем с перечным соусом. Идеально. Не дайте ковиду лишить вас любимых вкусов. Выбор за вами. Вакцинируйтесь.
와.
近排咧，無論係老師啦、家長啦，都對住 ABRSM 呢個 Online Music Theory 或者中文叫做網上樂理考試咧，充滿住無限咁多個問號啦。咁經過咧，我喺 ABRSM 嘅官網上邊去睇晒所有嘅資料，同埋同考官去溝通之下咧，今日咧一一去解答大家對呢個網上考試嘅問題。
你like咗未啊？like完之後咧，仲要撳訂閱呢個掣同埋撳個鐘去咯。都識啊！
Hello， 大家好，歡迎嚟到名門音樂，我係全老師啊。今日想同大家一齊去研究一下 ABRSM 網上樂理考試嘅所有問題嘅，包括你嘅報名嘅過程啦。咁首先咧，報名嘅日期咧係由4月26號到5月4日嘅。咁而考試嘅日期咧係由5月26號到6月23日嘅。咁網上嘅樂理考試咧，同埋呢個傳統嘅樂理筆試咧，到底有咩唔同咧？咁 ABRSM 咧喺早前3月12號咧已經公布咗，如果你嘅地區即係譬如話香港咁啦，係有得考呢一個嘅網上樂理考試嘅話咧，筆試咧就會取消㗎啦。換言之咧，以後咧喺香港咧都會係考網上樂理考試㗎啦，就唔會再有筆試嘅出現啦。咁所以咧，以後嚟咧，我都唔會點樣去比較究竟有咩唔同，我會直接同大家講網上樂理考試佢嘅分數啦，佢係點樣考嘅。咁今次 ABRSM 呢個網上樂理考試咧，滿分係75分嘅。咁啊首先咧，好多學生咧即刻就會想知道，喂幾多分合格啊？50分就係合格啦。